Welcome, guys, and thank you so much for joining us here at Split Screen D&D. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. My name's Tom Quinn, resident dungeon master here at Modern Myth.
And I am Josh Winans. I am audio guy and player character here at Modern Myth.
And you guys stumbled into a trap, and now you're getting attacked from both sides of the screen, because that's what we do here at Split Screen.
Oh.
This one is, as my staff rules legal counsel, I don't know where we're going to land on this one, but today's topic
Rules lawyer.
is homebrew.
Ooh.
Yes, homebrew.
That's a
homebrew.
good topic.
Yes. Yeah. I think everybody loves a good homebrew.
I hope so. If you crafting your own beers, and that's a little out of our wheelhouse, though. I'm surprised you're going.
Well, this is going to be a little bit of a different episode. Nothing but hops, barley, and water going on this one here.
Oh.
No,
talking D&D. Don't worry.
In
folks.
all actuality,
Don't worry.
we are talking about homebrew, Dungeons and Dragons. If you guys are just getting started with the hobby,
I might not know this.
homebrew effectively is just when you make your own shit up. You generally try to do it within the confines of the rule, and I would say if you intend to be successful with it,
right,
you attempt to homebrew in a balanced manner.
Yeah, otherwise it's going to destroy your game very fast.
But I don't think a conversation about homebrew is complete without a conversation about the rules themselves.
Good point.
And this is where I'm wondering if we are going to differ in opinions.
Okay.
Where do we want to start? Do we want to start on the DM side? Do we want to start on the... Ultimately, I do think homebrew really is in the DM's wheelhouse more.
Then why don't you start, and then I'll tear you apart.
Okay. All right. I'll take the dodge action and begin.
You mean the block action?
Whoa, I don't know if that counts as. So here's actually this is actually an interesting place. I think in the shallowest of terms that counts as homebrew. There's a lot of people out there who are going to go like, that's not homebrew. Calling something by a different name isn't homebrew. I actually think I probably agree.
So like reskinning certain things.
Well, reskinning, I think maybe there's a bit more effort that's going into reskinning an entire class, say, than to get down under the root system of what we're talking about here. Kel is notorious for taking the block action, which is actually, it's just a riff on the dodge action. It just makes no sense that Kel's dodging anything.
I'm a strength-based plate mail.
Big old shield.
Yeah.
And so we've just been calling it that for the duration.
Kel takes the block action. I say that at least 5 times to 10 times every battle.
Yeah. Yep. That's the truth. Now, whether that constitutes homebrew or not, I think, again, if it is, it's a very, very shallow
it's athletics.
example.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the rules themselves, because I think you can't start talking about homebrew until you start talking about, and this is not to say that that you can't homebrew entirely within the rules. No rules being broken whatsoever. You can create an entirely new class. Technically, there's nothing in the rules that stops you from doing that. Yeah. There's nothing in the rules that, it wouldn't be breaking the rules to make an overpowered class. No rules have been broken technically, but
I guess.
But my big question is because as a DM, when I'm thinking of homebrew, when I'm thinking about bastardizing the game in any fashion whatsoever,
harsh word.
I like that word. Mainly because I think you can be heavy-handed. I think you can be harsh with the rules. The rules themselves, and this is to the credit of Wizards. Note that they are merely a suggestion of how the game should be played.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the rules. You are a man of your rules.
I like my rules.
Which rules are sacred and should never be broken, if any? And I can tell you, since we're going to lock horns here, aside from the dice, I don't know that I believe that any of them are sacred beyond that. honoring the dice roll is that certainly constitutes a rule.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
That I'm not sure there's anything else about the game, especially from a DM standpoint, a world building standpoint. There's not really anything about that space that
I just automatically go to the extremes.
Okay.
Which, Wizards has also done a really good job of playtesting and balancing most of their stuff, not all.
Yeah.
But so it's a really good place to start.
Yeah.
So,
and we are specifically here talking about 5th edition.
Yes.
For those who are...
Well, 4E is even more balanced to a point. But, yeah.
Can that be the last time we say the 4E on...
No,
the
I like...
Jesus.
No. Actually, I much prefer 5E. But, so this is extremes. But let's not talk about extremes because that's only for For me, if we are at our table, which we have trust and respect with each other, and we have key. All that. I think rules can be bent or broken as long as they're consistent, and that if they differ from the rule set, and let's say you call something, and I'm like, I think that might be an X, and you say, well, I think it'd be this because of this, and as long as that's always the case, or it makes logical sense, I don't see a problem with it.
Well, let's say a creature that I've inserted into the world that has an ability that will absolutely break your understanding of the game. Here's an example that comes to mind, and I'm very curious to see if you remember this, because I saw a little flash of anger. Could have well have been rage, albeit you do
you have a little barbarian in me.
You are you have not multi-classed into barbarian yet. But you were fighting when you were in the bandit camp. You were fighting, and there was a bandit Silver Tongue who was actually spitting a little bit of game in Katarina's direction. He also, one of his traits is he could never have disadvantage. You remember this?
Because it directly negated one of my characters' key characteristics.
Right. When in that block action, getting back to that, is a big element, and rightly so. Now, I will say, I could absolutely see there being a problem with half of the monsters you're fighting. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
Half of them can. But so there's an example of where I knew I could subvert your expectation of the rules.
Mm-hmm.
But if I wanted if I wanted to do that and not begin to dismantle the trust that we had built, it had to be it's a unit doing it.
Right.
So
it is a special case.
So there's an example of, this is kind of, think about your classic kind of smooth talker, bard-esque character, hand crossbow, and he used a lot of kind of charm person-esque, a lot of persuasion-esque skills. That's clearly a homebrewed. It's clearly outright breaking a rule.
Mm-hmm.
Since we don't have to even deal in metaphors, give me your thoughts on the bandit Silver Tongue.
From a gameplay standpoint, that it made sense to me, even though it upset me because it took away my thing. It makes sense. You're trying to create meaningful encounters, and when you have a person who's always constantly making you have disadvantage, because again, Kel takes a block dodge action a lot, and that immediately makes him very hard to hit. So how do you, as a DM, deal with that? Okay, cool. You did away. What was the reason behind it? Why was he able to never have disadvantage?
When I was originally conceptualizing him, because I was actually conceptualizing that there might be, this might be call it a class of bandit, that they are the smooth talking gambling. They're the Doc Holidays. They can do no wrong. They're drunk as shit, and they're still got every line. They've still got... The idea was that he's just that smooth. That was kind of the whole premise.
This is a while ago, so I don't remember that. But if it made sense, yeah, why not? Homebrewing Monsters. Hey, if you're a player, don't memorize the monster manual.
Yep.
Don't. Why are you playing the game if you do that?
I would say also nothing is going to encourage your dungeon master to
Homebrew
homebrew
more.
all of the monsters
Yeah, I
in your
know.
encounters is you constantly knowing all of the traits
it's-
of the creatures.
Don't do it. So in that where homebrewing monsters and giving them special abilities is really fun, and it makes you have to think outside the box. Okay, my character 99% of the time does this action. Okay, here's a unit that is directly challenging that. How now do I respond?
Right. And I think really, again, as a DM, your goal isn't to beat the players. You're not in opposition with them. You're trying to give them interesting challenges.
Your past would disagree with you, I think, sometimes. I mean, sometimes I think you just want to kill us.
I mean, there are times I want to kill you. I try not to let it show in the game.
In game or is this?
No, just in real life. I mean, all of you. Sometimes I just wish you were all dead. No, but so I think it gets back to that aspect of homebrew, break rules, have a great time doing it, but don't carry an edge of malevolence while you're doing it. Don't break rules to beat your characters.
Right.
Break rules to make them think differently about the encounter.
We're talking about homebrewing monsters. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Gosh, homebrew monsters. I mean, gosh, take an existing reskinning. Oh, this is a cool monster. Oh, he has a cool ability. I'm going to take that ability and put it on this monster now.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's also not to say there's a lot of times I will homebrew things into creatures that are not inherently beneficial to the creature. There's times I will homebrew something into a creature, and this draws back to earlier versions of D&D. I will say the
4E.
rate at which, no, not 4E. We're talking more like, let's call it 3.5 in that vein.
Sweet spot.
I don't think. I think 5e has done a great job of finding a balance for the type of game, for let's say a narrative-centric game
very
where
much.
combat can play out in an efficient manner.
Yep.
That is not to say, though, I think that there are many times I'll put monsters into a scenario or creatures into a scenario that clearly warrant vulnerability to something, or clearly warrant resistance to something.
Right.
That is kind of fallen by the wayside as the additions have gone on. And I get not having to crunch 20 dice rolls to see if, like, well, did the arrow hit the skeleton?
But it sucks. When, like, I'm a radiant damage dealer in our current campaign, when it's like I'm fighting something that should obviously have a weakness to radiant and it doesn't.
Yeah.
It pisses me off.
Yeah. And there are absolutely times where I have decided, hey, that thing, albeit the monster manual says nothing about it, none of the guidebooks say anything about it, where it just makes sense. And a lot of that's fallen by the wayside. Let's step away from creatures and the like. Let's pivot over to the player side. So let's talk a little bit about characters, classes, weapons, armor, what have you. I mean, anything in that space. I mean, I know where you stand on on homebrew. I don't know many people who are not big on homebrew, especially in kind of the resurgent era of D&D.
Yeah.
Again, I think if you are playing a raw game, a rules is written kind of a game,
does Adventure League like that kind of feel?
That stuff, yeah. I
you have to follow that.
But I think I even mean earlier editions, which really were a more rules centric. You see a lot of entirely different systems coming out now that are not D&D that are classified as rules light tabletop RPGs, and the whole idea is really that so much of what you might be rolling for at the table can just be done in your interactions, and the DM can just adjudicate, like, wow, that was a really powerful interaction. I wouldn't go that far as to say, hey, we can dispense with dice rolls.
Oh God, no.
So talk with me about, I know you had mentioned to me at one point about the notion of home brewing. I do think that kind of lives in the wheelhouse. This is not a call for players out there to go, hey, it's session 3 and I decided to homebrew a few things on my character. Your DM's probably not going to respond well to that. What's a good avenue by which to start introducing homebrew as a player. When you've got really exciting ideas about your character, clearly you need to get on the same page with your DM.
That's the first thing.
What do you think is the best process by which to do that? Or is the answer to simply become a DM yourself and just start running a game where you are also the only player?
Now, if that appeals to you, absolutely do it. We've talked about that. If you feel a call to be a DM, try it. It's fun. But from a player standpoint, do your homework first. Don't you can. I mean, but if you're just walking up to your DMs like, hey, I got this idea, and it's blah 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 blah, and you, they might hear you out and they might work with you on it, and bless the DM that does that, or they might not and be like, but I'm coming back. So using examples that we've used in our own game, Kel uses a spear, and in D&D 5e, rules is written, spear sucks balls. It is one of the worst weapons.
Yeah, spear is pretty lame.
Pretty lame.
Written, especially given its historical significance.
Which is where I was going to go. So I was like, I love the Roman warfare. I love the Grecian, the phalanx and all that stuff. So when you look at it historically, the spear is the most prevalent weapon in most warfare. And why is that? And so when I approached, so Kel wields a spear with a shield. So that's normal, but I argued for reach, which is not rules as written. And I was like, well, if you look at it, it historically makes absolute sense. And from a rules as written, the pike or the halberd or any of the two-handed reach weapons is a 1d10. Well, then spear's only 1d6. Why not give it that? You're sacrificing that damage for the shield.
Right.
So it made sense. I did my homework. I was like, okay, this is not going, I'm not trying to legitimately break the game.
I mean, you were, but I
agree.
I could appreciate it in the moment.
Yeah. If I was really trying to break the game, there's a lot of things I could have done. But yeah, do your homework and don't just like. This is what I see a lot of examples of is people who are like, I want an overpowered character, and they try to trick their DM into saying, hey, that homebrew is cool, and then they'll suddenly spring it on them. Don't do that. When I came up to you, it was like, hey, I have this idea for this character. I laid everything out to you on the table. I said, hey, we're not even level 1 yet. This is what it's going to look like at level 11. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. And that's something I'll say that as a DM I was very appreciative of is one, you came and you made a solid case for why it should be what it is. I think you actually made a solid case for why the rules as written should be changed. Actually,
yeah.
I do think the spear is a pretty poorly integrated weapon.
Why would you ever use a spear versus a sword, given the rules as written? Makes no sense.
Yeah,
but historically, they were always using the spear first, and then then they go to the sword.
And I will say, piggyback off that a little bit later in this episode because I think we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Some interesting modifications to rules as written, but we're going to get there.
Okay.
But coming in as a player, making a strong case, not just for why, hey, this is what I want in a homebrew, and this is why I want it. But also for here are the implications it might have later in my build.
Yeah.
The full transparency made it really easy for me to say, one, I can't disagree with the notion of that modification.
Right.
just based on, again, what a spear is. I mean,
I think I even sent you videos like, here, this is what.
Yeah,
this
you
looks like.
you were really gunning for that spear. Yeah, I think I've got like 6 unopened emails of just nothing but like eight videos attached to each. No, but you came in, you made a strong case for it, and you took responsibility for laying out that case. You didn't go, hey, I want a spear, I want it to have reach, and then I have to go, okay, well, let me just look at some things and go to, for those of you who are DMs, I mean, you probably already know. For those of you who have never DM'd, you probably have some sense, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes for your DM. Just as a tidbit of advice, if you take any of that workload you have just coated whatever your ask is in sugar. So Mary Poppins that shit. And,
right. But that was also a trust thing, though. You had to be like, okay, I am telling you all that I'm planning to do.
And I will also say that in that layout, you laid out Tunnel Fighter, you laid out Polearm Master,
I laid out everything laid together.
And we're talking about the trifecta of Doom coupled with Reach. I mean, it was
I fucking did it. I convinced my DM to do it.
And the thing is it has made for. I mean, certain encounters have suffered for it because a failing to think outside of the box on that. And that's another thing I would say with regard to homebrew is if you're going to homebrew something for one of your players, don't go, oh, well, they've got that. Everything I do from now on is going to completely circumvent that.
That takes all the fun out of being a player.
Yeah, you have given them a strength. Great. Exploit their weaknesses. Don't exploit their strengths. That is not the place to attack your players. If I have a mob of, let's say, hook horrors who are pouring out of their nests, this is a real event. Pretty. What I envisioned being a pretty good scrap for the party. Kel managed to bottleneck up the entryway into the nest cave system. And I'm pretty sure they did a total of like 8 points of damage to you.
Yeah.
And everyone else basically kind of like snuck around.
It was beautiful.
It was gnarly. But it was that homebrew playing out precisely how it was designed to play out. So don't rob that.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Because we want to feel powerful as players. That's why we're playing the game. That's why we're heroes. And
that's why you want homebrews.
Yeah.
I mean, because you've got an idea of what that power looks like.
And does that play out in every battle?
No.
Hell no.
And there are absolutely times where I go, you know what? This is an encounter I want Kel to struggle with. I know what your strengths are, and I will create an encounter that I know is going to make you struggle.
Ranged. Oh, yeah. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was an encounter you guys never got to, which was an Elven Ambush.
That would have been bad.
And it was a bunch of like jumping from limb to limb in the trees, arrows raining down.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of a, can Kel like rally up and keep the group set? Because, I mean, you guys were just going to be artillery outmatched. And you guys never encountered it, but I had it in mind and I was like, I'll be interested to see what he does with this.
Yeah.
Especially because it was a very kind of a flashback to the crossbowmen of Fort Hill, just raining arrows down on your
that would have been interesting.
Yeah. But so that's one thing. One big thing I'll say with homebrew is it doesn't feel like a cool perk if from square one you're designing everything else in the game to diminish that perk. So just keep that in mind. Let's talk a little bit about. I mean, homebrewing. As far as I'm concerned, the reason you homebrew is because you got ideas rolling around in your head. And you want them to be real on the table. You want to see it in action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether that's a cool weapon modification, whether that's a cool creature that just doesn't exist out there in the ethos anymore with like the trillions of publications. Probably you think something's homebrewed and it's like, no, those guys got it on page 92.
Right.
But, so in my mind, that's generally why homebrew, that's why, and I do want to pivot at some point to the DM side of homebrewing campaign settings, homebrewing, the kind of the big picture homebrew.
Oh, goodness.
But I do think that there's a lot of people who maybe want a little inspiration, people who may be starting out with the game, or maybe people who have just kind of played by the rules, by the book, and they're looking at, hey, we're going to be starting a new campaign. I'm thinking about new characters. One thing I will say is, generally speaking, I certainly would say that I land in this camp, and many of the people that I know who DM, who I've spoken with, don't, as a player, feel like you are somehow bothering your DM. Now, talk with your own DM about this. Maybe they've got a trillion things going on, and they really just are like, hey, But so many DMs that I know love thinking about homebrew stuff. They that's part of the reason they run the game, because they like thinking about these things. So if you have an idea and you want to see it come to life at the table, talk with your DM.
Communicate. Oh my God.
It's rarely, I think, rarely a situation where your DM is going to receive that negatively. Okay. That said, also, if you bring something to your DM, respect the fact that he is trying to balance a lot of requests, and sometimes your request for homebrew, he can see a glaring reason why that's not going to work.
Right.
So, it's the double-edged sword of being a DM. I mean, you take on some additional subset of responsibility. You also have that final say. So, it gets back down to the trust and the communication.
Absolutely.
Make that what it is. But if people are struggling to just pop their own ideas out,
inspirations.
What kind of resources do you have? An immediate resource as a player? I'm sure you have a resource that maybe you go, this is a great place to
start.
To start if you're thinking about homebrewing some stuff for your character.
Yeah.
I absolutely have a DM one, but start on the character side.
So for inspiration from the player standpoint, the classic is to go with movies and that kind of stuff. Anime. I'm trying to think of like some of the things I hear. Books, any of that stuff. A great place to start. What you have to do from there is conform it to D&D rules.
Is it fair to say that, and I think that despite the fact that I early on made a case for rules are to be broken as far as Dungeons & Dragons is concerned, you cannot break rules you don't understand.
Yes.
And so if you want to start homebrewing,
got to know the rules.
Get a decent grasp on the rules. And that is not to say if you're brand new to the game and you've got some really cool ideas, that doesn't mean you can't lean on someone who knows the rules better than you.
Oh
yeah. I wouldn't say I outright have homebrewed for brand new players, but I would say as far as they were concerned, where they might bring me a concept. In a lot of cases, I try to tease that concept out just by asking a series of questions. But if they were to describe something that just simply I can't achieve with the default classes, it might be a deal where I go like, well, we're going to do this, but I'm tweaking this little bit here just so we can kind of get to what you were talking about.
Right.
So allow the experience of more veteran players if you're newer to the game.
Yes.
But that is not to say or to absolve you of your responsibility to get familiar with the rules, because these are really fun rules to break.
Yeah.
But again, you need to have an understanding of what they are before you can start breaking them responsibly.
Right, because the danger with homebrew is you become that overpowered character where it takes away from the fun of other people at the table.
Right.
And that's the danger of it. And to talk with your DM, and I think you kind of hinted at it, talk with, if you have a rules lawyer, min-maxer, oh, goodness, we get a kick out. Hey, maybe you've noticed in the campaign, my wife has asked, like, hey, what should I do with my character? And,
You mean that dip that she took into Artificer?
I don't know what you're talking about, but now she has an AC of 18 as a wizard.
That dip screamed Josh Winans.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Screamed Josh Winans.
No idea what you're talking about.
And so, but it is another example of, I mean, you could be a very experienced player, you can be a brand new player. The internet has tons of resources with regard to tweaks, and they don't have to be homebrew necessarily, but just ways you can tweak and optimize your character, homebrew concepts, things like that. On the note of Aster, since Josh's wife Ariel plays Aster Kerrigan in our campaign, the young prodigy mage. It's a great example of, and this is a point that I want to make as DMs. This is a point that I think you should also be cognizant of as a player, because despite the fact that I'll probably be the only DM in the history of DMing to ever say this. Okay. DMs are fallible. I know that's a big deal. That's a big deal. That doesn't mean as great of things as you might think as a player. It means that if a DM grants you that homebrew, and later on comes to you and says, look, we have a problem.
Okay.
Respect the fact that they are there to try and make sure the game is fun for everyone at the table. They're not trying to be punitive. They're not trying to come back. And the example I wanted to use is, so Aster has a homebrewed subclass for Wizards. It's their arcane tradition. And it was very pertinent to kind of her character arc within the story, which she's still living through as we speak. But that subclass is the Conduit of the Ancients, which is this kind of strange tether to some ancient power that she doesn't understand.
Okay.
And in that subclass, her spellbook, in many ways, it feels a bit sorcerer-esque. It feels almost like, it's interesting, it's a wizard subclass, but it feels like this kind of strange one between sorcerer and warlock in flavor.
Yes.
Because there's this kind of patron feel, albeit there's no direct connection. And the flavoring of her spellbook is such that the spellbook is full, or not full, but it's got quite a bit in it. But the runes on the page are actively moving and shifting.
It's not until
she understands them, or more appropriately in our terminology, interprets them. And the idea is that anyone else looking at them can't really understand what they're seeing. But every day after a long rest, she rolls a die 4 to determine how she is interpreting her spellbook. And that results in a variety of potential perks. One of those perks is a recovering energy, which allows her to regain spell slots. And it's simply an oversight in my typing of the phrasing that I left out the word when you cast a spell that targets a creature. So it said when you cast a spell, you regain the spell slot if you kill a creature.
Oh, jeez.
And so this is a perfect example of, as a DM, when you make a mistake,
fireball.
You need to admit that you've made the mistake.
Yeah.
You need to go to your player and you need to say, hey, here's, and the same goes for if you've done it on the other end of the spectrum. If you've created a creature and went like, holy crap, I didn't. Now this is a great example of allowing the dice to remain sacred, but like, let's say, hey, I've got giant boss battle and they've got this awesome ability. And I was like, that's going to be so exciting at the table. And the first time they use it, 2 of the players are downed. And I go, that ability doesn't recharge.
There you go. Yeah.
I didn't have to fudge a dice roll, but I can just say, I didn't think it was going to be quite that powerful, but you need to admit to yourself, I've made a mistake. Okay. And you can correct that stuff behind the screen in real time.
Okay.
That is not to say that there aren't all sorts of times you're balancing things, because again, there is so much to try and keep track of when you're building out, especially these encounters that should threaten death, should threaten TPKs, these tense encounters where if you realize early on, hey, I've overstacked this encounter big time, admit to yourself, I've made a mistake, and be as seamless as you can in correcting that mistake. Now, if you've done that with a player, as I did with your wife,
right?
I simply told her, I said, hey, I know this sucks because it is going to feel like a nerf, which it is. It is a big nerf because it is a massive.
Yeah. Once you figure out the weakness of it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And quite frankly, it was more just an issue of the verbiage that I used in writing it up was mistaken. So it's simply changed from now when you cast a spell, it used to be if you cast any spell and it kills something, you get that spell slot back. Fireball is a problem with that. There are many wizard spells that are a problem with that.
Yeah. Any AoE.
Now it is a spell that specifically targets a single creature.
Okay.
So it needs to target a creature. There's a perfect example of me bearing my flesh so you guys can...
you are fallible.
You guys can crack the whip online. But actually, since we're on the topic of being online... definitely, if you're getting anything out of this conversation,
if you're still here,
here.
Hey, why don't you like this?
We love all 6 of you. But we definitely like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying this.
Yeah.
But also drop down in the comments some of your most enjoyable homebrews, the coolest, cool classes, subclasses, weapons, whatever it is.
This is such a deep subject.
But I would love to hear. Just pony it up again. I just said it out loud for the entire world to hear. You guys are also fallible out there. Give me an example of a time where you just you laid it out there and you realized after the fact, what the fuck did I just do?
Right.
And it happens again. It's the way it is.
So, as a DM, as a young DM, you are following your module. You've learned your rules. You've been a good DM, but you're starting to want to spread your wings.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start?
I would say you start by acting as ambitiously as you think you can. I think you really, and again, you're the only one who can answer that question. If that means changing the race and class of the barkeep at the nearby, some of them don't even have classes proper. Maybe he's a barkeep by trade. That's his. But let's say that you've been toying around with the idea of this really fun orc character. Half orc, what have you? Do it. Throw them in. Now, know your module. You've just said that they know their rules, they know their module.
Right.
If it's imperative that that's an elf, don't start there. But more often than not, find cool ways of doing those tweaks. Monsters are a great place, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
because they're here today, gone tomorrow.
Right.
If it's a bad tweak, and as I said before, if you're a DM, there are a lot of things you can do to balance on the fly that don't sacrifice the dice as this
sacred.
This immortal entity on the table.
Right.
And again, there's so many people who agree or disagree with that. I think I'm actually in the vast minority in thinking that way.
Yeah.
But I think
I see what you're saying, though.
If your thought process is the only way I can balance this encounter is fudging rolls, then I would seriously question what other levers have you tried pulling to rebalance an encounter.
That's what I think is like you're like, hey, the dice roll is sacred, everything else is fluid. And once you think of it like that, then it's like,
if you're fighting a dragon and he scorches the party with his breath opening encounter, and that lays them low. Like, let's say I roll a crit on it. We're talking.
Everyone's down.
I guess it would be more of a save on your guys' end.
Yeah.
But
look at you, rules layer.
Let's just say that you guys are just laid low by that.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with me saying, you know what? That breath weapon isn't going to recharge for X number of turns. Or I'm going to give him a -1 penalty. Or so something. Maybe it recharges on a 5 or a 6. Now I'm only having it recharge on a 6.
Okay.
There's an example of, and I will say, actually, so there might be an issue. Someone might be going, but Tom, you just said the dice are infallible.
But you changed it after the fact. You didn't fudge the dice roll in the
Well, and I would actually say, recharge dice, to me, that's one of the areas, because powerful abilities, game-changing abilities exist on these. Well, legendary actions just are what they are, so deal with it. From now on, I'm homebrewing legendary actions onto all of my creatures.
You face a level 1 orc
and
who has
legendary resistance. Legendary resistance is going to be standard. Ariel, as a mage, is going to just love legendary resistance on all my creatures. So I did want to give one major shout out. If you're thinking about homebrewing as a DM, and now here's an interesting, and I'll pose this out to what I'm going to dub the mythos, the audience out there. Okay. I like the term mythos for
I like that word. It's a good word.
So I'm floating it out to you guys, but I'm also in real time. I'm going to ask you. The shout out that I wanted to give was to Dungeon Coach. This is to you, Dungeon Coach. Big shout out. I love your channel. I love everything that you're doing. Keep it up. You, especially the publications, are just nuts. And that's specifically what I want to talk about is Dungeon Coach has so many publications. And the question that I want to pose is something homebrew once it's been put down properly into writing? Because, well, there's an argument that what Dungeon Coach is doing is creating some of the most compelling homebrew material out there.
But still homebrew material.
Well, I would say there's at least the argument that it's just a different rule set that now you're playing by.
Sure.
So,
but then you could say that for anything.
We're definitely in semantics area. If you are a DM, if you are dissatisfied with what the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player Handbook are giving you, I cannot point you in a better direction. Check out Dungeon Coach's channel. Go on YouTube. You'll find him easily, Dungeon Coach. He has a killer channel, and he has done a phenomenal job of reworking so many systems. And that's where the term rework is, I think, what stands in contention of homebrew, because the second you start farming it out to the masses and a bunch of people are going, hey, I'm using Dungeon Coach's system. Are you using a homebrewed system? You know, so whatever the case is, it doesn't denigrate the quality of the content. We're talking about reworks for combat, reworks for armor, reworks for spells. I mean, just all sorts of reworks. I have not found one that I'm not left at the end of the episode or the end of the content nodding and going like, so I'm letting you know as a player.
Well, I was going to bring this up.
Be fully prepared next campaign. Now I say next campaign.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And one other thing, Dungeon Coach. I really hope at some point you're stumbling across this content. I would love to sit down and chat with you on DM and the PM.
Cool. So, but going off of that, if you're going to implement homebrew, don't be like, oh, hey, don't do it in the moment. Like,
absolutely not.
Do it ahead of time, and which you've been great about. One of my favorite homebrews that we have at our table is we don't, as players, roll for death saving throws.
Yeah, and that's as a DM, I think that's a pretty big ask. I was actually surprised at how agreeable everyone was to it.
Yeah, Anyway,
I'm really glad you brought that up. And I actually don't remember where I got that.
XP to 3.
Is XP to level 3?
XP to 3. Their channel, he had like his 10 homebrews, and I saw it. It's like, oh, I sent it to you. I was like, oh, of all the things he said, I like this one.
Yes, and it blew me away that you like that. A player going, I want to roll a critical dice. I want to roll a little bit less. So I guess on that note, shout out to XP to level 3.
DM in the PM.
Also DM in the PM. Love to sit down with you.
I don't know if he's a DM, but...
Oh, he's definitely, yeah.
Because RuneScape. Anyway, yeah.
So, like I said, I didn't recall that's where I got it. So yes, credit where credit's due. I agree in terms of a homebrew, and here's just an example of one of the ones that we are implementing at our table. All death saving throws are rolled behind the screen by the DM. If you want to talk about having to cultivate trust to get your players on board with something, it is a phenomenal homebrew. But if you are a DM out there and you're wanting to propose this to your players, make sure you've established that trust, because it is it adds so much tension to the game. And quite frankly, what ends up happening before, and I'm sure many people can relate, is a member of the party is downed, they're making death saving throws, and the party goes, oh, they haven't had a failure yet.
Yep.
We'll get around to them when we get around to them.
And it takes away all the meaningfulness of being dropped.
And kind of tying into the notion of making death meaningful, is part of death being meaningful is the unknown. And so if players are completely aware of how well off or near death one of their companions is, and I've witnessed firsthand, I'm sure many others have, people look over at the body of their friend who's bleeding out and go,
he's okay.
When you fail 2 more death saving throws,
that's not how
then I'll get on over to you.
Yeah, that's
but right now I'm going to keep, we're talking about people who have risked life and limb alongside each other.
That's not
they
how
should
it
have
works.
an inherent concern when someone is down. So that is a great homebrew. Again, a shout out to its origin coming off of XP to level 3. I think that and that's a great example. Don't be, definitely as a DM, don't be too proud to see someone implementing something at their table and go, that's going to elevate my game to just an unbelievable level.
Yeah.
And then do it.
Well,
implement
and you
it
posed us. You didn't do it in game. You're not like, oh, by the way, as you're rolling a death saving throw, oh, you don't need to roll that death saving throw. I got this now, and this is how this. You address this outside of games, like, hey, this is something I want to bring into the game. Let me know your feelings about it.
Yes. And I couldn't advocate for that approach more, especially now there are homebrew rules that I might go to the mat on. They're not, if a player said I have got a problem with that, where I'd go, but I think I'm still going to implement it.
But you
Here's
did it
why.
outside of game beforehand.
Yeah, well, but I'm saying that is not when I'm asking a player who by rules as written, and again, I believe those are made to be broken, but I can't decide that they're made to be broken for another player. If that player says the rules say I roll a death saving throw,
okay,
who am I to tell them no? Your interpretation of the rules is wrong. My interpretation of the rules is I can break whatever I want. Right. But out of respect for my players, and again, this comes down to your table, this comes down to your DM, this comes down to your players.
Yeah, that's hard.
But out of respect to my players, I reached out. I said, hey, this is a homebrew I want to implement. These are the reasons. It's the exact same thing you did when you brought me the spear case. I laid out the case for why I thought it was important that we implemented it into our game, and everyone was very receptive to it. Some people, I think, had more apprehension than others, but I don't think anyone at this point would argue that it has not achieved its goal of that rule. Building tension when a player has been down.
Plus, it takes as a player, when you're rolling your own death saving throws, there's so much pressure.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, it's kind of like
a release. It's weird to think about.
But yeah, I think that probably is a player by player. So I mean, I think in terms of to kind of round things out with the episode, I guess, are there any things that you would have to say with regard to on the player side? Any final thoughts that they should have before they start dabbling in the homebrew space?
So, yeah, from the player side, if you want to get into homebrew, I highly advise you to know the rules well. Don't try to homebrew something if you don't know what you're trying to change. And then if you have an idea for homebrew, do your research first. Know what you're going to be asking, and be fair. Don't try to break the game through homebrew. No one's going to enjoy that. Then once you think you got that figured out, then outside a game, talk to your DM and bring all the points forward that you've discovered. And I hate to say it, DM's rules are rules. If they say, hey, I don't like this homebrew, you suck it up. That's what it is. But hopefully you can come to an agreement and enjoy it. And from the player side, I think that's pretty much what it is. And for inspirations, go to anything that is popular. You got your books. My next character is heavily based off the Witcher series. Like Kel is based off of Roman legions. I mean, you can get your inspiration from anywhere. So yeah, don't be afraid to look.
Yeah, and I think one final note, kind of on the player side, is especially if you're new to the game, make sure that what you want to do isn't already encompassed in the rules. That's part of knowing the rules. Is make sure you understand. I mean, there are a lot of things you can get done through multi-classing with what's there. But that is not to say that that every base is covered. And if you find yourself in a space where what really sounds fun to play for your next campaign just does not exist in the space, I will echo your point. My feeling is your first point of contact should be your DM. Just let them know you're thinking about a homebrew. Give them an idea of what you're thinking about.
And make sure
that conversation.
Yeah, make sure your DM is open to homebrew. Some DMs aren't, and respect that.
Yeah, and talk with them about because to the exact same point. Let's say I'm running my next campaign, and in my next campaign,
no magic.
well, it's an extreme example, but let's say I have got a really compelling plot line where maybe kind of the whole gist of the campaign is, can you bring magic back into the world?
Ooh. Oh, the dragon. I don't know if you ever read the Dragonlance books, but that's exactly what that is.
And kind of a nice segue talking about the different elements you can kind of ping off of in bringing different homebrew elements. But that's going to stand in direct conflict to you bringing this crazy wonky mage. Now, conversely, as a DM, immediately, I mean, we're just shooting this off the top of the head. It's a really interesting story if one of the party members is the only person able to command the arcane
So
anymore.
be open to it. Challenge your previous thoughts.
Absolutely, and that goes both directions. As a player, if your DM says, "No, I'm really thinking about doing this," and it's not gonna, then think about like, okay, what can I do that's really exciting in that space?
Yeah.
As a DM, maybe take that and mull that over. I mean, just as we were talking about that, I already love some of the narrative threads with someone in the party kind of being the. You ever see Children of Men?
Oh. Yeah, one of my favorite Michael Caine moments is in that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. He's like the stoner hippie.
He's the stoner hippie. I love that movie.
The cool part about that is, I mean, in a less, well, it's still, I guess, equally fantastical, just in a different way.
Yeah.
But it's this idea that this one woman is capable of giving birth anymore. You have this kind of, the sacred flame is being carried by a party member, and a huge amount. I mean, there's so much to be done with that. This is what I love about the game is literally in 2 minutes you can start going down a rabbit hole and you can start writing an entire campaign setting just like that. That's the beauty of homebrew. The beauty of being able to forsake or transcend, pick your word, the rule books as written, and start taking what you have rattling around up here, whether you're a player, whether you're a DM, start putting it onto the table and making it real, making it your own, but make it fun, make it fair.
DM's like Dungeons and Dragons is a game. Make it fun. That's always my ground zero.
With that said, I'm not sure that.
So, you got any challenges for me with The World Is Yours?
Well, we haven't done it yet, and we've been talking about homebrew a little bit, and we, I think, can I set the scene for just a minute?
I'd love you to set the scene.
As you stand on the barren precipice, overlooking what you know will be the battlefield within just a matter of days, you can already hear the drum of undead footfalls over the far ridge. Kel glancing across the men that he's assembled, realizing that what stands here very likely will not be enough. His mouth opens and he speaks.
Men, we stand here at the edge. The moments before us is life and death. But know this, I'm proud to be beside each and every one of you. We may die here today, but they will know we stood, for the world is yours.